Marco Island. This is the Good Morning Marco podcast, the first, best, and only podcast on Marco Island. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Sullivan.
I'm Jordan Crayley.
And today we have a very special guest.
David Leaser.
David, very...
You're so nervous.
Oh, hey. David, very happy to have you on the podcast. And go ahead and tell everybody what we're talking about today.
Well, we're talking about some really interesting activities on the island that really kind of bring the community together. Yeah. They're sponsored by the Beautification Committee. They have been proven to provide real value to the community. And they're a way for people to come together to learn, to socialize with each other, and to really make Marco Island a better place.
Cool. So you could say to make Marco great again. Anyway, for audio listeners, I'm wearing my MGA hat. So before we get into everything today, a couple of quick housekeeping things. This episode of Good Morning Marco is sponsored by none other than Cava Culture Marco Island. Cava Culture Marco Island, we know them, we love them. They've been featured in many an episode of Good Morning Marco. They were our first ever interview that we did, and of course that is where we interviewed most of the candidates for city council during the city council interview. So if you go to Cava Culture during Good Morning Marco March. We are now in the month of March. If you go to Cava Culture and you mention Good Morning Marco at checkout, you can get a certain percentage off of your order. So
we'll see you there.
Limit one per customer. Yeah, we probably will see you there. Limit one per customer, of course. So don't think that you're going to be, getting free rides every single day. But go to Cava Culture. They've got non-alcoholic drinks, kava, kratom, teas, coffee. It's a really great vibe. It's a great place, especially if you aren't one that's a fan of alcohol or you don't drink for any other purposes. And it's just a great place to be all around. Remember, every Thursday night is open mic night. They have happy hour between 2 and 5 every single day as well. Half off drinks, both 12 and 16 ounce taps and mixed drinks respectively, first and last hour of the day. So make sure to go and visit Laura and Jason down at Cava Culture and make sure to remind them that Good Morning Marco sent you.
Indeed. And by the time this episode comes out, it might be a little too late, but for our favorite listener, Laura, happy belated birthday.
Oh, yes. Well,
today is her
birthday.
birthday.
It will be too late because today is February 28th.
Indeed.
Yes, it's not a leap year.
So everybody put that in your calendar for next year.
Yes. Happy March, everybody. Good Morning Marco March. I coined that last night. Also, remember, we've got merch. We've got the hats. We've got stuff. We got a website. You can go to the website.
You know the gist.
Yeah, you know the gist by this point. If you want to sponsor an episode of Good Morning Marco, you can contact us through our website as well, and then we can discuss terms. With that being said, we're going to talk some Beautification Committee. So, David, you used to be the chairman of the Beautification Committee.
Right.
So, how did you first get involved with the Beautification Committee? When did you first join?
Well, believe it or not, when we were living in California and researching where we wanted to live in Florida, we drove around the entire state. We stayed in all these different communities. And then I started looking at the websites and, trying to do a little bit of research. And I came across, this community site on the website talking about these different committees. And they were all recorded, which was really great.
Yeah.
So I was, I would just in my spare time, I would start watching some of these committee meetings. And I saw there were some really interesting people on the committees that really wanted to do some great things to improve Marco Island. And I was really impressed with that.
Yeah.
And so after we moved here, a position opened up, and I applied for it and got onto it with the idea that I really wanted to do something bold on Marco Island, do something that was, big initiative, something that would really, so I coined make Marco memorable, right? So how do we
Hey, we can put that on a hat too.
So how do we do that? How do we make Marco memorable? So I thought if I could come onto one of these committees and I could do something, to use my skills and expertise, that's what I would do. So I joined the committee, then became the chair later.
Cool. So one of the reasons that I'm talking to you today and not someone who's currently on the Beautification Committee is because I can't legally talk to anybody on the Beautification Committee outside of a committee meeting. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But for right now, we've got two really big events, probably two of the biggest events for beautification coming up just by the time this episode comes out. In one of them in 9 days, and then the other, the deadline to apply is in that same time frame. So first, I think let's talk a little bit about Marco Nature Night. Now, I'm unfamiliar with what Marco Nature Night really is. I've read some of the documents that we've been had in our one-way communications via email, but there actually hasn't been any info available on the website until I just emailed in and said, hey, nothing's on the city website about this event. Can we get something going, please? So it's up there now. But so for myself, who should know a lot more, and for anyone at home who probably doesn't know anything about it.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah. What is Marco Nature Night?
So Marco Nature Night is an annual event held this time of year. And what it is it's a community activity to bring people together to hear from experts and to learn about different things that are going on the island or ways that they can make the island better. So, for example, they'll bring in speakers from the Naples Botanical Garden to teach you what type of trees would grow well on Marco Island, what type of trees to avoid. There are invasive species on the island, which ones to, how to identify them and how to, eradicate them, things like that. Then we also have so we have the plant life on the island, right? So there are people that often will focus on how do we improve the plant life on the island or how can we make it better. We'll have speakers that will come in on, what can you do in your own garden?
Right.
We had a speaker that came in that spoke about what type of fruit trees grow on the island. As most of us know, the citrus trees aren't doing very well on the island because of citrus greening.
I figured that out. I have an orange tree in my backyard. I finally got some flowers on it, but it's not doing so hot otherwise.
They're not doing well because there's a virus that's affecting them. So unfortunately, but there are a lot of other types of trees that will grow very, very well, very fast. They'll also looking at trees and plants that don't require a lot of fertilizer.
Yes.
So what can we do to improve our waterways through the way we plant? Planting certain trees. For example, we have a lot of foxtail palms on the island.
Yeah.
They require a lot of fertilizer. And if you look around the island, a lot of them look very yellow because they're very nutrient deficient.
Yeah, because
so
they don't get the
fertilizer. But on the other hand, we have the royal palms, which are native to the Everglades, a few miles away.
And personally, I like them more.
They're more stately and they're beautiful and they grow incredibly fast. They also absorb an enormous amount of water.
Yeah,
Two royal palms will absorb the equivalent of an entire swimming pool in 1 year. So you think about diverting that water from all that runoff water, which also has chemicals and things like that away from the waterways. So there's things like that you learn at this. Also on the animal life, everything from the sea turtles to the tortoises to the owls to the
coyotes,
the coyotes and things like that, which are new to the island. Most people don't realize that they didn't even come to Collier County until the late 1980s. But that's a really good point because we have all these native species and these endangered species that we're trying to protect on the island. So what can we do to protect them? Those are the types of things you'll learn at that. And then, of course, you can speak to experts. And then there'll be tables set up. And, of course, there's refreshments and things like that.
So who can come to Marco Nature Night?
Well, anybody can come to Marco Nature Night. And the first time I came to Marco Nature Night, I was actually living in Naples. And our daughter, who Jacqueline, who was very, very young at the time, she was 5 or 6 years younger than she is now. So she was just a little tiny girl, wanted to come, and she loved it because they showed different types of lizards and things like that. She left winning one of they have oftentimes raffles of different plants and trees and stuff like that. So she left carrying a papaya tree out, but typically kids that are maybe a little bit above elementary school, maybe 6th grade and up, probably would get the most from the event. But really anybody, whether they're living in a condo, living in a home, if they're just visiting the island to know a little bit more and to get an understanding of what's going on the island.
Cool. I like that's a very good explanation thus far. I hate that you're so far over here. I feel like I can't see you at all, so I can't tell if you want to interject at any point. So
I'll just
if
hit
you
you
want
if I
to,
do.
yeah, you can hit me if you want to. Not like that, but I mean, just if you need to, you can. You have express permission to.
Tap, tap.
Yeah.
Excuse me, kind sir.
But so let's. How do you know how Marco Nature Night started? How long we've been doing this?
It's been going on for a long time. I'm not sure the year that it first started, but again, its purpose has always been how do we educate people on the island about the nature, the animals, the flora, everything on the island, and how can we make it better? And I think right now, it's even more important than it was before, because when you think about it, and you've lived here your whole life, so you've seen all the changes. But now that we're almost completely built out, some of the issues become a little more enhanced. Let's say, right? There's everything from the traffic on the roadways, so that impacts things like tortoises crossing the streets. There are a lot more trees being planted. There's a lot more lawns being planted. A lot more lawns mean a lot more fertilizer. It also means more rabbits and things like that. So there's a bigger impact to the island than there was even a few years ago.
Yeah, really interesting. So, what would you say to somebody who has just heard about this for the first time, is kind of mulling it over if they're going to be coming on? It's March 19th at 7 p.m. I think. I believe that's correct. There will be flashing on the screen the correct date right now. Like that. So maybe I'll even overdub it if it's wrong right now.
March 19th, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Sorry, you're not getting bright-eyed and bushy-tailed Ryan, future Ryan. It is, it's midnight, and I'm at a hotel in Jacksonville.
There, so that was future Ryan commenting to you again. Anyway, what would you say to somebody who's maybe on the fence about if they're going to come or not, about a good reason why they should go?
Well, first of all, if you are going to come, sometimes it does sell out. So there's like an overflow crowd. It's in the community room, which is right behind City Hall next to the fire station. Yeah. And so there's the main room in the community room, but then there's the overflow room. Yeah. So if you are going to come, I recommend you get there kind of on time for that reason. But I think the best reason to come is to really understand, what the possibilities are for you on the island. And I think I've always left with some kind of idea. I remember the guy, again, who came down from Fort Myers, that talked about the different types of fruit trees on the island. And then people are saying, should I plant pomegranate? Should I plant this? A lot of people have come here that have never lived in Florida or in a tropical or subtropical climate. Yeah. And so they come from maybe the Northeast, the Midwest, wherever they come from. They really don't know.
And I feel like everybody's just going to assume, I'm just going to plant an orange tree.
They're going to plant an orange tree, or they want to plant the same things that they planted back there, and they think that the gardening techniques are the same as they were back there, whether it's the fertilizer, the amendments. For example, I lived, like I said, most of my life in California. And in California, when you go to plant something, you amend the soils with all these different types of things like grow mulch. Yeah. You don't use grow mulch on Marco Island, and the soils are sandy. So what should you do? How do you irrigate? When you live in a sandy soil, you should use drip irrigation. Those are the little things that will save you time, money, and frustration, I think, that you'll learn. And if anything else, if that doesn't, strike your fancy, there are always hors d'oeuvres and drinks and things like that, right? So
yeah, that's good. All right. So Jordan, as someone who this is your first time hearing about Marco Nature Night, do you have any questions?
No, I think he covered it really well. I mean, but to be honest, it sounds like something I would go to now that I know what it is, I mean, I love the Naples Botanical Garden, so that alone just kind of piqued my interest.
So, let's see. I think that actually covered. That's good. That's good. 15 minutes out of the way. All right. So I think that properly covers Marco Nature Night. We got another big event coming up, which for all of our listeners, the deadline to enter this competition is rapidly approaching. So Marco and Bloom. I've seen those signs my whole life about people. It's like the 2023 Marco and Bloom competition winner with the flower and thing on it. So the Marco and Bloom competition, for the layman, what is that?
Well, it is a contest, and it's a contest that is developed by the Beautification Committee that goes around and judges people's front yards, basically the front yards, and based on a number of different categories, whether there's a lot of color, whether it is designed by the homeowner or designed by a landscaper, whether it is low, drought tolerant, or whether it's filled with native species and things like that. But it's really an opportunity for people to showcase the hard work they've done for their lawns and their gardens. And there are some people that have really put a lot of love and care into their gardens. We want to recognize that. And also, maybe give people some inspiration for things that they can do themselves. Yeah. So, there are people that will develop these beautiful gardens and they really don't get the visibility. This elevates them, gives them the visibility, and other people then can look at that and say, I want to do the same thing, whether it's something that they want to do themselves, or again, there's a professional landscape category. I want to go to that landscaper and I want them to do the same thing on my yard. The nice thing about it is, how can you argue with something that's trying to make the lawn, make people's front yards more beautiful, right? And when you drive by,
that is in the strictest definition, that's what the Beautification Committee is for. Or just commending people for making the job of making Marco memorable. Right. They're doing it themselves by having all the beautiful foliage, and I like utilitarian plants. So if I have some aloe vera out there, that's my cup of tea. I just know that if anybody even dared to submit my house, I would have some choice words with you, because you have worse cataracts than I. But I haven't been able to get my lawn back since Milton. But I think it's a really cool thing that we do about having just recognition for people like that, because if you don't live on Barfield, Heathwood, Collier, San Marco, you're probably not going to have many people driving by seeing it's like, oh wow, look at how nice their lawn is, or how nice everything is outside their house. Having that extra recognition is really cool for having someone who maybe lives on a back cul-de-sac somewhere where they're not going to have anybody looking. It's like, and then their photo of that's in the paper, and it's like, oh, look at how nice this is. And some very nice
and there's a category even for cul-de-sacs too.
Yeah.
So, but I think you bring up you said something interesting, was you hope somebody doesn't nominate you, because you don't have to do it for yourself. You can nominate somebody else's. So this is no time to be shy. If there is somebody in your neighborhood that has done a nice job, you know what, why not just put a submission in for them, and recognize the hard work that they put into that. And the same thing with the cul-de-sacs. There are people that have gone around the island that live in a neighborhood, and they've beautified their cul-de-sac. And there's water, by the way, in those cul-de-sacs. There's things you can do with the Department of Public Works to really improve those cul-de-sacs. Yeah. And again, it's all about making people smile. I remember in my home, years back, we redid the lawn. We put new sod down, and we put a fence. We did all these nice things on the lawn, and we did it just because it needed it, right? Yeah. And that night, I went out on my front porch, and there was a bottle of wine and a card. And some woman put a card and a bottle of wine. She says, now when I walk by your house, I smile. She says, it makes me happy. It makes me smile. She says, and I just wanted to thank you for just brightening my day just a little bit more.
That's so cool.
And I think that's what we all want to do in life, right?
Oh. I'm going
That's
to
inspiring.
Go buy some sod. That's what I'm going to do. I want some gifts on my doorstep because I'll fix my lawn. I'm going to do that. That's an inspiring story. If that doesn't get you to want to put a little bit of extra effort in, I don't know what does. That is really cool.
Speaking of people doing their yards recently, I was driving down San Marco one day, and this guy was in the process of planting new stuff, and his wife was just sitting in the driveway on a chair watching. And it was like the funniest thing ever.
And she's participating with him, right? Jordan, you said something interesting, though. You said, you love the Naples Botanical Garden. And I think that anybody who's been to the Naples Botanical Garden can't help but think that their blood pressure drops when they walk around that botanical garden, right? I mean, because you're going through all this beauty. And we've collaborated with the Naples Botanical Garden, with the Beautification Committee, on a number of different projects. But we could do the same thing here on this island. We could turn this into a botanical garden, right? And just think of what that does for the mood and the climate and everything else. I mean, we're here on God's earth, and we have all these resources at our disposal. And one of the things that we can do in a very small way is make people smile by, beautifying it.
Yeah. Wow, that's a very, very inspiring statement. I'm just thinking about what I'm gonna do with my front yard because I got so many things that I have to do. I need to.
If I had a front yard, I'd do something.
Well, yeah,
I live in a condo.
Yeah, I have an obligation now to make my yard beautiful again.
And the condo complexes obviously can participate in this as well, right?
Now, is there there's not just, of course, the incentive of, hey, you get a little sign in your front yard that says that you've got the best one. There's also a prize for winning, is there not?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the prize is this year.
Okay,
but the recognition of it is beyond the sign, because there's you're in front of the city council. Yeah. It's recorded, usually in the newspaper, and then we photograph all the homes, and it just gives people a real sense of pride, I think, to be able to know all their hard work is paid off.
Cool.
I went one of the winners last year. We went onto her yard, and she wasn't so sure what I was doing because we were taking photographs in her yard, and we didn't even ask, right?
Oh.
So that was probably not a good idea. But it did go up to the door. Nobody was there. But
what are you doing?
Right. But when we got onto the property, and this is something the committee does, is the committee gets together and they walk onto the properties. You start to see things that you might not even see from the road, and you might see as you're walking by. But she had done a real caring job with orchids in the trees, and there was a lot of thought put into those plants. One woman who had done a beautiful job in her front yard, but she insisted that we come into the backyard, which is not really judged. It's not. Right. It's mostly, what's curb appeal is what it's about. But you looked in the backyard, and you could tell that she really cared about things, living things, not just these plants. Because she had this orchid collection in the back that was really, truly spectacular. Yeah. So, it's a nice way to get to know people as well.
Cool. So, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked you before. As someone who's only just heard about the Marco and Bloom competition, do you have any questions?
Do you feel like that depending on the intensity of hurricane season, it affects how many people are willing to participate?
Yes. Ooh. That's a really good question. There's no question. A lot of people's landscapes have been damaged by the hurricane. So it absolutely does affect the number. And after Ian, of course, the number of people that did it dropped off. A lot of people had, some massive damage to their landscapes. I think a lot of them are recovered. And those that have recovered, there's more than enough people on the island that have beautiful lawns and beautiful gardens right now to fill up the roster for these things. And I think it's really, anybody that's listening to this, nominate somebody else's. Even if you don't do yours and you don't think, like you said, your yard might not be ready, but somebody else's. If you drive around and you see somebody's, go onto the website, the City of Marco Island website, and I think you said there should be a...
Yes, they're on, if you go onto the city website, you go under committees on the drop-down menu on the left side of the screen. You'll find beautification. Under there's basically links to Nature Night and to Marco and Bloom, and then one for everything else that we do. Because there's three things. There's this, there's that, and then there's everything else. I'm kidding, of course. But right now, that's what it feels like, because I've gone to one meeting. I'm going to my second meeting on Tuesday, and it will be mostly all we talk about. But there's also there are physical application forms available at City Hall, as well as the places that are appearing on the screen right now. I'm going to have to check my email to be able to be 100% certain where else they're available. I know at Marv's office there is some available there, but if you can't make it to City Hall for whatever reason, but you can fill it out online, or if you're not the online savvy type, if someone messaged you this podcast and you don't know how to get onto YouTube on yourself, you can go down to the City Hall and pick up a application form right now, and make sure you do that because you got a week left before that deadline. So, yeah. All right. Is there any final things that you want to say about Marco and Bloom?
No, like I said, just absolutely fill out the form for somebody else, even if you don't do it for yourself.
Cool. All right. Well, let's take it back a little bit. So let's see. You first, you moved to the island because you were driving around Florida. You went to a whole bunch of different towns and settled on Marco. What made you want to move to Florida in the first place?
My wife. Mm-hmm. She's the one that wanted to move.
Yeah.
So we were living in California,
right.
And I was working in the tech sector for most of my life. Okay. I worked for a company, IBM is when I worked for most of my life. And I used to come to, and I used to run some events with IBM out of Orlando. And so every spring, I think it was, January, February, we had a major event. So we would take a mini vacation to Disney World, and then we'd go to the Disney Vacation Club over in Vero Beach.
Yeah.
My wife thought that was what Florida was about, living at a resort,
you know
on the
what?
water.
That is most of at least Orlando.
Yeah, right.
So,
right. but living,
it's
being
a considerably
being
large amount of Florida. So.
A lot, yeah. And then being at the at Vero Beach at the resort, I said, okay, being at the Disney resort at Vero Beach in February is not exactly day-to-day living in Florida, right? I said you have to experience it. My grandparents, when I was young, lived on Treasure Island, which is off St. Petersburg in that area. Right? And so I remember how hot it was. And I remember the humidity. And of course, coming from California, humidity is only like 20%, right?
It's just on the Wikipedia page for Marco. I don't remember what page it is, but I was Googling something about Marco when I was in high school. And it described our summers as oppressive, and I've never found a better word to describe what the heat and humidity on Marco during like June, July is like. Than oppressive. Yeah. It's a beautiful day out today. Oh my goodness, I love February. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah. So so my wife, I said, okay, so back to what you just said. I said, if you want to see Florida, I said you have to see it in August, right? And I said, we're going to take the better part of the month in August, and we're going to drive and stay at different places around the state. So, my brother lived in Sarasota. We went to Sarasota, Tampa. We went everywhere, basically, Coral Gables, all that stuff. And then we were in Naples. And I liked Naples more than the other areas. I definitely liked Southwest Florida because it seemed like there was much more community in Southwest Florida, right? So then we thought we'd come over to Marco Island. It really wasn't our first choice at all. In fact, it was probably close to our last choice. But then we decided we would stay at the Hilton. So we stayed at the Hilton for like a week. And I know staying in a hotel is not the same thing as, living on the island. But on the other hand, what we realized was there was really a nice community here. Really, it was really safe. It was clean. The beaches, of course, you can't beat the beaches. They're immaculate. They're beautiful and pristine and everything else. So we really fell in love with it that first week. And then we went back to California, put our house on the market. It sold in 2 days, which was kind of, we were not prepared for it selling that fast in 2 days.
Wait, what year was this?
This is in 2019.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah. No, that is.
It was very, very fast, right?
Yeah, because I was going to say if it was 2020, okay, that would make sense. But yeah, 2019, we sold a house in 2019, and it was like pulling teeth from a Rottweiler. It was not fun.
Right. No, it wasn't. So we had no place to stay.
Yeah.
So it's like we have to now pack up our, menagerie and everything else, and we have to get out of this house and move out. So we did. We moved to Naples. We moved to Verona Walk, and then we started looking on the island, and then of course we found something pretty quickly.
Cool. So you worked in IBM before. What were you doing for IBM?
Well, I worked in a number of different areas, but it was business development and developing innovations at IBM. I developed IBM's first cloud-based embedded learning solution, so we embedded all this learning into our products.
Yeah.
I developed what was called the IBM Digital Badge Program, which was the first company to develop a comprehensive credential program that didn't require a college degree to get into a high-paying job. So these are very, very high-paying jobs that only take 6 months of skills development. So I developed that program. What was called the New Collar Certificate Program was part of it. The IBM Smarter Workforce, I was involved in developing the Smarter Workforce. So I was really in business development. I was in execution, innovation, and then also in marketing as well.
Yeah. You are the second person I've met this week who worked at IBM. Actually, a lady at my church worked directly under one of the vice presidents in New York.
Oh, okay.
Then also my uncle is a senior vice president in Minneapolis.
Oh, okay.
Michael Haydock. I don't know how connected IBM
well,
is
when
as a
I was
company,
there,
but, I mean,
it's much smaller than it was. I was there during the big heyday of IBM, and we had 400,000 employees.
Yeah.
So 400,000 employees compared to Marco Island of 15,000 or whatever. It's
a lot of people.
it's quite a city, right? So yeah, but it is surprising how you run into people that have worked there. Yeah.
But so let's see, Jordan. Do you have any questions? Because I'm a little at a loss.
I mean, I feel like I have.
We could move into rapid fire. If we
I was
want
gonna
to.
think that, but I had like a couple that
go ahead.
weren't. Like,
I would tell you one
rapid
thing though, real
fire.
quick though. So while I was at IBM, I told you I was going to these conferences.
Yeah.
And when I was young, I grew up on a horse farm, and so we had Arabians, and I used to take photographs. So I, was an icon shooter, and I fell out of it. When I was in college, I was a yearbook editor and all that kind of stuff. I was involved with all these types of things, but I kind of fell out of it. And I thought, you know what? When I started coming back to these events, and I would take an extra few days, and I would typically like drive down to Miami, go to the Fairchild Botanical Garden, go to the beaches, whatever. I didn't realize they would be that cold in February, but they, surprising. And I started taking photographs, and I went back to Los Angeles. And I thought, I was really good at this when I was young.
Yeah.
But then I looked at these photographs and they were really bad. And so I met a guy who worked for National Geographic.
Yeah.
And he was at Bel Air Camera in Westwood, which was where I lived in Los Angeles. And he confirmed that the photographs were bad.
And always good to get a second opinion.
Right.
So.
And so he said, here are the 7 things you need.
Sometimes you're your own worst critic, and sometimes you're right.
Sometimes you're right. And he said, okay, but here's what you need to do to turn your game around. He gave me 7 different tips, everything from using a polarizing filter to using a tripod, things that I wasn't even doing. And so I came back to Florida, and I took photographs, and they were very, very good. And so I got a book published on it. It was called Palm Trees, A Story in Photographs. It was a coffee table book on palm trees. That led to a publisher in Hawaii, and I had at the time we had a place in Hawaii as well.
Okay.
And so I had a publisher in Hawaii said, we'd like you to do a book called Tropical Gardens of Hawaii. So I went around all the islands in Hawaii and took all these photographs.
Nice.
Then they said, we want you to do a book on growing palms in tropical climates. So I did a book on palm. And then I got, in Florida, Betrock's Information Systems is it's the company that does all the information for the agricultural industry. They asked me to do a book for them.
Oh, wow.
So before you knew it, I had these 4 books on botanical subjects, and that's kind of a little bit into the Beautification Committee in a way.
Yeah.
I've always had an interest in nature and trees and things like that.
That's really cool. That's great. That like just all of a sudden it's like, I wish I could be better at this.
Yeah.
I guess I will be better at this.
Now I'm really good at this.
It's 5,000 hours or whatever it takes to get better at something, or to learn something, and anybody can do anything.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, I did not imagine that how the podcast is right now would be where it is. If I don't know if we would have tried to start this 3 years ago, I mean, this project would have never gotten off the ground because of the amount of stuff that I've had to learn about production recently. So it's pretty good. And also, I mean, thinking for like you, like when we first started, you were like, I don't like public speaking at all. It's like, well, why aren't we starting a podcast, Jordan? and now we're both extremely well versed and can hold our own fairly well. So yeah, I like.
Well, thank
that.
you.
Yeah.
I think anything's possible for people, and we just can't be afraid of anything, really. Just jump in and be bold, and think big.
The best thing you can do is start.
Yeah, you have to start.
Yeah.
Put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, I just published my first book.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I just published it. It was less than a month ago. It was a month ago, exactly. It was right at the tail end of January. I started writing it like January 2nd. And it's a novella, so it's like 38,000 words, I believe. And
you're done with it already.
Yeah.
I mean, I always wanted to write a screenplay when I was young, and I went to college and I had I took screenwriting classes, and I never did anything with it. And 2 years ago at Christmas time, I thought, you know what, I'm going to spend the month of December, and I'm going to write down, because I had a couple really good, I thought were good ideas.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, I'm just going to jump in and do it. I can't overthink this.
Yeah.
And within 30 days, I had a reasonably good screenplay.
Yeah. I didn't even have an idea when I sat down. I sat down and I started writing.
Yeah.
and then I was like, oh, this is what it's about. And then I went back and I made some changes for like clarity's sake, because it's like, oh, now that I know where the story's going, I can foreshadow and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's just work all day and then write all night, sleep for like 3 hours total.
Yeah.
And then do the whole thing again the next day, and that was about 3 weeks.
And it just keeps. You just have to jump in. You know. So after I left IBM, about a year and a half, 2 years ago. My wife had a company called My Inner Genius, which they were an IBM core supplier. They were supplying to IBM, and so My Inner Genius was an innovation, a tech innovation that was launched because of a need at IBM. I told you about this. How do we? If people don't have a college degree, or they're coming out of high school and they don't know what they want to do, how can we identify the jobs that they're going to love and be really successful at? And not just a what color's your parachute type of Facebook quiz, but real deep science to make this work, right? How do we do that? So my wife's company, which had been working with American Express and Tesla and all these other companies for years, trying to figure this out, spent the better part of a year with developing these very sophisticated algorithms that can ask you these questions and literally get you down to the level of saying, this is exactly what you're going to love. This is what you're going to be. This is what you're going to be successful doing, and then getting into career matching and career mobility and all this other stuff. It's called My Inner Genius. But the bottom line is, there are people that we are working with that are in the tech industry that lost their jobs. There was a guy who was a truck driver, and he injured his back. He was done. What's he going to do now? You know, little did he know that he could be a systems programmer for mainframes. He didn't know that. He took this quiz. Well, this one, he went deeper. They went like 35 minutes, right? 40 minutes on his. But they went deep on him. Turns out he has the capabilities and skills to be a mainframe administrator. Yeah. And so he goes through this program. 6 months later, he's making, 6 figures, making a lot more money than he was making as a truck driver. Guess what? He's staying home with his family. All these other things. And I think that's really what life's about.
That reminds me of, I believe it's either an Einstein quote or it's misattributed to Einstein, which I guess all quotes are either them or somebody else. Anyway,
all comes from Shakespeare, right? Originally,
it's either Einstein or Martin Luther King or Shakespeare or Lord of the Rings or something. But if you quiz a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it will go its entire life thinking it's an idiot. Yeah. And in the same way, if you quiz a monkey on its ability to hold its breath underwater, it will go its entire rest of the life drowning. That's not how the quote goes. That's how I'm making it go. But people have skills, and it's like, I don't want to say everybody's a genius, but everybody's got something that everybody's a 10 at something.
Everybody
learned.
has an inner genius. Everybody has it. And tools like this now, we have the technology now to reveal that, to reveal it, and we need to take advantage of it.
I think I need to take that test.
Well, if you go to the My Inner Genius, I'm advertising. Go to the myinnergenius.com website. There's a couple quizzes up.
Go to the website.
If you go to My Inner Genius, there's a demo site. Kaplan has a quiz up there that's
You're
really
pulling
detailed.
it up right now?
Now, theirs is only like
I just don't want to forget it.
Theirs is a 3-minute quiz. It's basically your career interests. It doesn't go deep into matching you on your skills and capabilities, but it's going to say these are things we know that you'd be good at and you'd love. But it's myinnergenius.com, and then just the demos. The Kaplan one you have to log into. Google has one up there too. We have a Google one up there that's just Google Cloud
My
Careers.
hotspot is turned off. I can't do anything.
Anyway,
on this thing.
We'll have to do like a post after where we show our results or something.
Yeah, no.
The next episode sponsored by myinnergenius.com. Go to myinnergenius.com and enter the promo code.
But it is meaningful, really, to be able to say how can we find everybody has an inner genius in them, and when you look at the number of people that are in the wrong jobs in the world, and they spend their whole lives doing that.
Yeah. Where was it that I heard everybody's a 10 at something? This was in our Dream Teams training course that we did at the church. It was just like, hey, not everybody can be on the worship team. Not everybody can be on the production team. But also, someone who's like me, I am not the person to make the coffee in the morning at the church.
Yeah.
Can I make the coffee? Yes. Can I be good at making the coffee? Yes. But there is someone who's really good at it. And then are we going to make that person, we actually had, we gave her an award last year. We gave Sharon the She Brews Award instead of Hebrews. Yeah, because it was
because it's a church.
Yeah, it was our church gala. We had there's some photos of that on my website. If you look under Sull Events, the Sull Events tab on RyanMSullivan.com. But we gave out like awards like Dundee style from The Office. But if you were to put her in my position, she'd be out of her depth, and you put me in her position, I'd be out of my depth.
Yeah.
Because nobody can make the coffee like Sharon can make the coffee, and you know, if Ryan's not there on a Sunday, things are falling apart. So.
Yeah.
So speaking of depth, because I've been wanting to ask this question for a while.
Go ahead.
So
You
beautification.
didn't hit me, so I didn't know.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Beautification, we've been talking a lot about like people's front yards, trees, plants, stuff like that. Does it go any further than just the greenery of Marco Island?
You know, it does. You know, when you think about it, because there's hardscape and there's landscape on the island, right? And one of the Beautification Committee's initiatives was the wraps that they put on the utility boxes.
Yeah.
So if you go around the island, you see these, you know, utility boxes, and that's kind of unique to Marco Island. I think one of the opportunities the Beautification Committee has is to make Marco memorable, right? But also to make it unique, a sense of place, right?
Yeah.
Is that, you know, you know, everything that we do should almost really make this island special, that when you go over that bridge, you go, you know, well, first of all, when you go over the bridge, it's already special, right? But when you go over it and say, you know what, this could be no other place than Marco Island. So what can we do? The things like the wraps on it, the beach entrances could be very, very unique, and that's another beautification initiative. How do we improve those beaches? There was the 10,000 Trees program to plant more trees. How do we line these trees? Naples Botanical Garden said, why don't we make this the flowering tree capital of Florida?
Yeah.
You know, and have all the streets lined with different types of flowering trees, so people come here in different seasons from all over the country, all over the world, and say, that's the flowering tree capital of tropical, you know, we could do that. We have bold ideas.
And the thing
you have to get there.
We may not have the funding as the Beautification Committee,
right?
But I mean, how much was it for the? I think someone donated in the realm of like $25,000.
Somebody donated $20,000 to plant trees around the lake here, but at $200 we'll plant a tree.
Yeah. And
so, you know, there's.
Sounds like beautification needs a GoFundMe.
We need proper funding, but also people who are also passionate about this. And I mean, it's not like Marco as a community has a lack of money.
Right.
I think it's more so a lack of people really knowing what they can do with it. About like, of course, you're going to have your early adopters of your people who are just like, I'm interested in making Marco beautiful, making Marco memorable, so I'm going to take the initiative. Then, going past that, it's about finding the people who wouldn't know to even look to think about, oh, I'm going to put my resources there.
Yeah.
Because
and you have to surround yourself with people who can say yes or can say how.
Yes.
So you know, and if a door's closed, you have to go and find another one.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you have to open a window.
Yep. That's right.
Sometimes you got to sneak around, ask for forgiveness.
Right.
But
well, I'm gonna go pitch my ideas through a window.
With a brick, just.
It will happen.
Yeah. That's funny. So let's see. Going forward for so me as a new inductee on the Beautification Committee, this will be my second meeting on Tuesday, second of, if I stay for my full term, my second of 48. That's 12 times 4. Yeah, 48. Of 48 meetings that I do. What what advice do you have for me as someone who is on the committee on what I should be doing to make Marco memorable?
Well, I think one thing you can do is listen.
Yeah.
Right? Is listen to people and find out what they really want and get their, Margaret Thatcher said you first you win the argument and then you win the vote.
Yeah.
Right? So if there are ideas and initiatives, I think the first thing I would say is be bold. Mm-hmm. Be bold, regardless of whatever happens around you. Always, paint in bright colors and not in pastels.
Yeah.
Right? And I love that term, and I think that's really what you need to do.
I like that a lot.
Right? So do that. Get the buy-in.
Write that down.
Get the buy-in you need to do it, and go as high as you possibly can to get the buy-in. And when I was at IBM, I got some very, very big initiatives. I mean, we're talking billion-dollar initiatives.
Yeah.
Advanced at IBM, and the reason the way I was able to do that was by getting as high up as I possibly could in the decision-making chain. I learned very early on that I was at a senior executive position. There's directors and there's general managers and there's senior vice presidents and the chairman. If I didn't get somebody at the highest level, the senior vice president, which was right next to the chair, to agree to it, it was very difficult bottoms up. Very difficult bottoms up. So I would say my recommendation is come up with bold initiatives, get buy-in from people in the community to do it, build a business case for it on what's the value to the community, to everybody, and then get in front of the city council and get them to sponsor it.
Yeah.
You need for any initiatives, I think on those committees, they have to have city council sponsorship. Like the 10,000 Trees program had 7-0 agreement on that program. Right. Same thing on the Beautification Committee. It was 7-0 agreed to it.
Which, if we could at least get a 4-2, that'd be great. Anyway. Yeah. on just anything right now.
You're right. Well, right. But there are certain things they do very much agree to.
Oh yeah.
There's their ideological.
I was just talking about the one specific thing that we have.
Well,
in common.
that's Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But no, there are certain things that you win the argument and then you win the vote, and then if you can even go to each one of them and say, would you sponsor something like this, then you know that you already know that you've won the argument.
Yeah.
Then you just get in to get the vote.
Yeah. That's some very sound advice. Very sound advice.
Well, do you think we should wrap it up with a couple rapid fire questions?
I think we should wrap it up with a couple of rapid fire questions. I like how that rolls off the tongue. Wrap it up with a couple of rapid.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Did I say it right? I feel like I said it wrong.
That's what you just said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I just repeated what you said. You
I
can
don't
go
know.
ahead and start.
Okay, I have a really fun one. What is your favorite plant?
My favorite plant? Coconut palm.
Coconut palm.
For sure. I mean, who doesn't?
The coconut nut is a big nut.
I think that's my favorite.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. Coffee or tea?
Tea. Green tea.
Really?
Oh.
Now, here's the thing. We have interviewed so many people that I've been surprised the sheer amount of people that don't drink coffee, like straight up don't drink coffee on this island. Do you drink coffee at all?
So, I had a major health issue a couple years ago. I had a full cardiac arrest. I had 7 cardiac arrests.
So are you completely off of caffeine?
So I'm really, really low on caffeine, right?
Yeah.
And so, and honestly, I don't miss
it. Trip to Panera Bread, which is...
that's not going to happen, right? Yeah. So no, I'll drink a little bit of soda in the morning and stuff like that. My, cardiologist said I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
But the reality is I don't miss it. And you know what? My teeth stay a little lighter, maybe, because I'm not,
There you go. Yeah, I drink 0 soda.
Yeah.
That's a lie. I had a Dr. Pepper a month ago. Outside of that, I drink 0 soda.
My wife drinks Dr. Pepper.
What's that?
My wife drinks Dr. Pepper.
There's the Dr. Pepper girlies out there, and you all know who you are. Are you a Dr. Pepper girly? Are you one of them?
I'm gonna say no.
Oh wow, okay. My sister is like obsessed. I think
I think the only people that like Dr. Pepper are the obsessed people.
There's those people, and
taste,
they are also the same people who love pickles, who are like.
But
my wife will not go near pickles.
Really?
No.
Well, the Dr. Pepper obsessed people are the same like.
Same type of obsession.
Could you compare Dr. Pepper girls to Hot Cheeto girls?
They're in a similar nomenclature, but they're.
So back to rapid fire here.
Let's see.
I think it's her turn.
Yeah, you can go ahead and say anything that you want.
West Coast beaches or East Coast beaches?
Ooh. Oh, that is a really good one. How far west do you want to go?
California.
Oh, okay. You don't want to go to Hawaii.
Oh, yeah, no, we can go to Hawaii.
Then it's Hawaii.
I forget you're island to island.
No, if you're in the United States, there's nothing beats a Hawaiian beach. I would say Florida's number 2. California is just a different experience because it's a little more lively. You've got beach walks and things like that. It's a little more activity, and the rocks and everything. But I'll tell you, it's freezing cold. You know, the water is freezing. It's only warm in September. I lived in Malibu for a good number of years, and they filmed all these TV shows like Baywatch and all these other things. What most people don't realize is that they put unbelievably bright lights to make it look like it's a sunny day because there's coastal fog most of the year. So there's June.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there's May gray, June gloom, August fogust, we called it. So it's mostly fogged in. People come to visit me thinking they're going to go to this beautiful beach, but it doesn't really clear up until the middle of the afternoon, and then the water's like 68, 72. It's cold.
Don't like that.
So Florida.
I don't like care
if we're
for that at all.
continental, Florida.
Cool. All right. Let's see. What is the weirdest job you've ever had?
The weirdest job I've ever had.
Or most interesting job
The most
outside of
interesting
IBM.
job. The most interesting job I've ever had. Being a lifeguard.
Being a lifeguard.
Yes.
Okay. Were you a lifeguard here, Hawaii, or
I
California?
was in California.
Okay.
In California. In California, I was a lifeguard, and I worked at a number of different places, and I taught kids how to swim, so I gave swimming lessons. And I think it was really rewarding because I would get these kids that didn't know how to swim at all. And I remember this one little girl who came in, and she didn't know how to swim, but I taught her all these techniques, and who knew that they were going to work? And I actually let her go one time. I was holding her up and having her paddle, and she actually swam off across the pool, and I was just stunned that she was actually able to swim. So of course I immediately told her mom to go sugar her up and get her an ice cream cone. That's where it starts early, right?
Yeah.
With kids, but that's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. I think is that kind of stuff.
I know you pointed to one, but I want to do
the
the other one. You can do that one.
Yeah, okay.
If you could master any skill like instantaneously, what would you pick?
Finance.
Oh, I should have said that.
That's a good one.
I should have said
I
that.
didn't think about that as a skill.
Yeah.
I'm down. Yesterday, I'm down $1,000 in the market. So yeah, I would say finance as well. Day trading. If I could instantly master day trading, that's almost a superpower right there.
I think that home finance, everything was never taught in schools, and I really think it should be. And I feel like I missed out.
Yeah. I remember when I was in 7th grade. My 7th grade math teacher, she retired halfway through my school year, so we had 2 different subs for the rest of the year, and one of them, she was like, I'm going to throw some of the curriculum out the window, and we're going to do some of this stuff that you guys are really going to need to learn, and she showed us how to fill out a 1099.
Wow.
And showed us how to write a check.
Wow.
And we did a home building project where we did a scale. We all had to look up our houses on CollierCountyAppraiser.com and build a scale model of our house and then finance it in 7th grade. And it was
she
wild
doesn't sub
to me.
anymore now, does she?
No, she does not. It was wild. Her name was Miss Barber. I loved her. It was wild to me the amount of students who did not recognize the sheer blessing that we had been bestowed upon, because I would know how to write a check if it weren't for that class. Most of my budgeting, the knowledge came from that class until I had conversations with other Jordan specifically. He's really good at budgeting. He's at work right now. He's running our very own Department of Jordan Efficiency, and we're cutting costs everywhere. It's great. We just got rid of a $7,000 phone plan. Great things going on. Anyway, it's the utility of that was great. I hope and pray that other kids would be able to get that same opportunity. And it was so weird to me because it felt like the week before there was people saying it's like, why don't we learn how to do our taxes in school? We never learn anything necessary in school. All these guys are dead anyway. Why are we learning about George Washington, the Potomac, or whatever? And then we actually learn an incredibly valuable skill, and they're still not paying attention. I'm just like, all right, guys. All right. Now I know it's just because you're lazy. It's not because you actually want to learn. Anyway.
Rapid fire.
Yeah, it wasn't very rapid
Your
fire.
turn.
What? My turn again? Did I?
I just went.
That wasn't my question. I just answered it. Okay, cool. All right. If you could have dinner with any person living or dead, specifically like a historical figure, who would it be?
So we're not going back to Jesus. We're probably, doing a little more contemporary than that.
Yeah, we'll say within the past 300 years.
I think Jefferson would be one of them. I think it would be Jefferson or a modern day Jefferson like Ronald Reagan or somebody. And I actually worked on the Ronald Reagan campaign.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I was what was called a press escort for the White House when he did his campaign in 1984. And so I went to the victory celebration, and of course Nancy Reagan gave us some gifts and things like that.
Cool.
And it was really a nice experience, but never got to actually talk to him.
Yeah.
Just kind of like wave to him. And what's interesting is when he's on when these president or anything is on the media and they're waving to the crowd, they're not waving to the crowd, they're waving to the cameras from the National Press Corps. So I was with another woman who was a press escort. So we were the only ones waving. To Nancy and Ronnie.
That's funny.
So, but I think Jefferson. I would love to know what the meaning. I always would like to know the real meanings behind things, right? And I think the meanings behind the what they were really thinking. Yeah. When they developed these founding documents and founded this country.
Yeah, because I think one of the most interesting things about Jefferson is just about.
He's an enigma, really.
Yeah, and also when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, he wrote it in a very short period of time, too. It was shortly after his wife had passed, too. Shortly after Patsy had passed away, and then also just knowing that there's so much stuff going on in France. I'd love to know a little bit about that. And just Thomas Jefferson. Who said it? There was a quote from. Oh goodness, I'm trying to remember who said this. There was a meeting of the minds at the White House. I don't remember even what century it was in. I don't remember if it might have been FDR. No. I have no idea who it was. Could have been FDR, could have been Theodore Roosevelt, could have been Eisenhower, could have been Truman, could have been anybody. All I know is that they said it was some of the smartest people on the planet at the time were all in the same room together, and it's like there has perhaps not been the sheer amount of brains in this room, in this dining hall, except for when Thomas Jefferson dined here alone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, wow. It's flashing on the screen.
I think this is the most extraordinary collection of talent, of human knowledge that has ever been gathered at the White House, with the possible exception of when Thomas Jefferson dined alone. John F. Kennedy, April 29th, 1963, whilst honoring Nobel Prize recipients at the White House.
Said that right now. I'm going to figure it out because that's going to haunt me for the next 10 minutes before I can Google it. So anyway, with that, I believe that's
I believe that's all. Unless there's anything else you'd like to clarify, mention, add about beautification, some things for like people watching who might not know.
One thing I would like to clarify is that the committees are there as representatives of the city council.
Yes.
They are the voice of the people. That is, the way it works is that they're supposed to help the city council get closer to the community, because it's very difficult for them to do that. An advisory committee to be able to say, so, go to those meetings. If you're out there and, on a Wednesday, I think your meetings for the Beautification Committee are at 3 o'clock on Wednesdays, the first Wednesday of the month, right?
Yes.
Go to the meeting, take your 4 minutes, and, bring up any issue, any topic, a recommendation on here's how we can make things better. Here's something that we think that needs to be fixed. Can you help us do this? But I think people really should get involved with the committees at a deeper level if they want to see something happen, rather than just going on Nextdoor, and creating, because it doesn't go anywhere. on Nextdoor. But if it comes
and
to
it's
you,
only the same 12 people in an echo chamber.
It's a bit of an echo chamber, and it's not necessarily productive.
Yeah.
But if they come to you, you're going to do something about it.
Right.
You're going to say, okay, let's form a recommendation around this. It is recorded, and then you can go to the city council and say, hey, this is what we're hearing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's the best way to get your voice.
I think it's especially valuable for people to know that the city council meeting isn't the only time you can make your voice heard.
Right.
And you don't need to be a keyboard warrior on Nextdoor. You can actually go out and do something. Because I mean, that's kind of how we started here. Because we back in the beginning when we were first like finding topics and stuff, it was 1 week Nextdoor was blowing up about two things. Mm-hmm. That was when it was blowing up about the trolley, which I mean it still does from time to time, even though it's DOA. And then it was blowing up about the restaurant that they were putting in by the cemetery. Mm-hmm. So we're like, well, we should do an episode on this and an episode on that. It's like, okay, cool. So,
and then after a little more of this and that, we're here.
Yeah. And it was a very short process from going, oh wow, there's a lot more to these things than what gets brought up on Nextdoor, to the next week I go and present the map that Jordan made at City Council saying, hey, this is an idea of what we could do instead of this. It's like just a thought, you know? And then it's how I got in contact with nearly everybody, and it's been a great journey thus far. So, yeah. Do you have any final closing arguments that I want to, other than Beautification Committee, anything that you want to say now that you have this platform of all of the total of almost 30, what did we calculate yesterday? 33,000 views that we've had so far across the podcast. So
no, I would just say share this with people, right?
Yeah.
Share this, because I think, you know what, the more we can share good ideas and things that are positive in the community, the better. I think it just enriches our lives when we really focus on all the amazing things that we have in this world.
Cool. With that,
Ryan,
Jordan,
where can they find you?
Dang it. You can find me at www.ryanmsullivan.com. On there, you can find all my social medias. You can also find a link to where you can get my book. Also, if you want to find me in person, I've got copies of my book, and you can skirt around Amazon and get it from me in person as well. Well, we can pitch that a little bit later. Jordan, where can they find you?
Now I want to know what you're going to say.
I was going to say our website as the podcast, but I figured we'll shout out you first, and then we'll do the combined thing second.
Well, thank you. Hi.
Those are my next door neighbors.
Oh, that's cool. I've met them here before. They tell Yancy where to fish.
Nice.
Anyway.
His name is Juan. Anyway, as you were.
You can find me on Instagram at jtcraley03. You can also find my business on Instagram. Pulled a Marilyn Monroe there. At Current Creations FL. You can also find my business website at Current Creations FL.
Cool. You can also find Good Morning Marco at www.goodmorningmarco.com. You can listen to episodes there. You can get links to where you can watch on YouTube, watch on Spotify, listen on Apple Music, listen on Audible, listen on Amazon, listen Apple, everywhere. The Podcast Republic, Deezer, and all the good and bad places. As well as you can also put in orders for merch. It will send us an email. We can get back to you on exactly what you'd like to order. You can get the Make Marco Great Again hats. They'll both come in Good Morning Marco Orange and Good Morning Marco Blue. You can get the t-shirts. We've got new designs that are coming on the website as well. And you can get mugs. And then also, this episode of the podcast is sponsored by Cava Culture Marco Island, which, remember, during the month of March, Good Morning Marco March, if you go down to Cava Culture Marco Island, you can get yourself 10% off your order if you mention Good Morning Marco promo code at checkout. So limit 1 per customer, of course, for the month of March. We're not giving away the world here. Just go on down. You can get non-alcoholic beverages. They've got kava, they've got kratom, they've got tea, they've got coffee. It's a great time. You can come down there on Thursday nights. It's open mic night. You've got happy hour between 2 and 5 where you get half price on anything in a shell, or it's buy one get one free anything in a shell, or you can first and last hour of the day you've got half off on 12-ounce taps, 16-ounce mixed drinks. So come on down to Cava Culture Marco Island and use the promo code Good Morning Marco for the month of March.
Props to you for remembering all that, because I haven't worked there in 6 months now, and I don't remember that.
Well,
yeah,
I was there.
There's Growler Wednesdays, and then buy 2 get 1 on
$5
Mondays.
off Growlers on Mondays, Growler refills on Mondays, or on Wednesdays, and then Mondays it's buy 2 get 1 free, and then Thursdays if you get a flight, you get a free 12-ounce tap, and there's another thing I'm not remembering. You'll have to go there to find out. Look at that. Anyway, any final thoughts before we close today?
No, just thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Official friend of the podcast.
Official friend of the podcast. I forget to say that. Thank you for remembering to say that.
Yeah, there was a couple episodes we forgot.
It's okay. Well, maybe they weren't our friends. I'm kidding. Maybe I might cut that. That's a joke. Anyway, with that, thank you so much for watching.
It really does mean the most.
And we will see you all
in the next one. Bye.
Wow, we did it in tandem. That was great.